Guest in the Informer studio is the member for Warrandyte, Ryan Smith. Welcome.
Good to be back, George.
It's good to have you back because there's so much I want to talk about. Do we really need the public holiday? Melbourne Cup Day?
Look, we've had a grand final public holiday for a game that we didn't have, and we had a race public holiday for a race that we couldn't go to. So it does seem to, I guess it should show Victorians just exactly where we've come to under these restrictions.
Explain some of the violence yesterday, some of the police action.
Yeah, I read about that and I saw images that we saw on TV.
Not pretty.
It's not pretty at all. And I think we did get in the recent reports that were tabled in Parliament that the confidence in police has taken a nosedive. I think I read that it was at record lows.
Wow.
That's disappointing. I mean, the police,
so.
I think, I grew up, certainly my generation, yours, we grew up respecting our police. There seems to be an element now that aren't respecting police, but police are being asked to enforce restrictions in a really supercharged environment where people have just had enough. I might have my own views about the restrictions, they impact on my life in so many ways, but for some people, they've just had enough. In fact, a friend of mine who's someone I would not in any way call an activist or someone who's political, he suggested he might go to a protest because he just said enough's enough. And if an average person like him is saying this, it just shows you how sick and tired people are of what's been happening to us over the last 6 or 9 months.
We've got a date coming up, it's called November the 8th, another key marker. The active cases have diminished, which is terrific.
Yep.
I don't know why people keep referring to them as donuts. I would have thought that was a very unhealthy image to perpetuate.
Do you know,
anyway,
it's also insensitive
we've got 0.
It's insensitive given those deaths that we've had over the last months to trivialise it. I find a bit offensive.
It is, totally. What did you make of some of the imagery that we saw around Spring Street yesterday?
With the protests?
Yes, protests.
Yeah.
And also, is there some of the fallout from the omnibus bill? I mean, this is a bill that people will find out much more than they ever imagined was going to happen. There's a lot of good stuff happening behind the scenes, but there's some parts of the omnibus bill that will shake some people's confidence in the government that currently is leading them.
Yeah, well, I think the protests showed that there's just a diminishing degree of trust that people have in their government. When a government extends these state of emergency powers on and on, and when they push through a bill and call it the omnibus bill because it's a sneaky political way of putting unsavoury and unpalatable things into the law and trying to hide it around other things that really have no relation to it. So we've got this bill that has some good things, stuff that we wouldn't normally oppose, but just trying to hide and to loot the importance of what actually people are protesting about. And I think if you take that in the whole picture over the last 6 months of the inquiry and ministers not knowing what's going on and then sneaking stuff through legislation, the protests to me show we've just had enough of a government that we can no longer trust.
Michael O'Brien, the leader of the Liberal Party, the opposition leader, says that he's got a bold plan to open up. How positive are you that if they were adopted, or some of the initiatives were adopted, that things would, especially business, would start feeling a lot more positive because Christmas is coming at a million miles an hour, and there are businesses out there, and we've spoken to them. And not only do you feel the pain, but I'm hearing, we did an interview only the other day with someone who is right in the heart of politics, right in the heart of small business, and she says, wait till all the support payments cease and desist, and all these compensatory initiatives that have been provided by government are moved to one side. What's coming is going to be seriously ugly. What do you say to them?
Well, it really will be a tsunami of disappointment and despair going forward. And I don't mean to paint a really negative, pessimistic picture because that's not who I am. But what the plan that Michael O'Brien put forward and the opposition's putting forward is really one that focuses on those businesses, as you rightly say. We've had for so many months Daniel Andrews getting up and talking about the today, the restrictions that are going on, the unfortunate increasing numbers of deaths and transmissions. But what we have been missing from our leader is, our state leader is the plan for the future. And there's been no real commentary about what's next. So we're hoping that the plan that we've put together can focus on some of those areas, the manufacturing area, the hospitality area, the tourism area. They're the places that we want to help out. And we've got over $1 billion worth of tax cuts in that plan, mostly directed to payroll tax, which, as we know, is a tax on employment. And we want to limit those taxes so that business can start putting their money back into getting their business back on track rather than giving their surplus money to the government. Because as Kerry Packer once said, governments don't always demonstrate that they're best at spending it.
Correct, and they've proven it year after year after year. Something else that we need to address, there's a fantastic part of Victoria, and the better part of the last 20 years, 50 years, has been its events industry. It's been absolutely decimated. It hasn't been marginalised, it's been decimated. How do we get that going?
Well,
I mean, we saw one of the biggest events of the year, the Melbourne Cup, nothing.
Yeah. I think if you go back into the 90s when Jeff Kennett really got these events happening, sports events and performances, plays, the arts, all those things were used as, I guess, a linchpin to get Victoria
moving. Major events program.
Yeah, and I think that's something that we've got to concentrate on getting back again, because as we've talked about earlier, losing our grand final to another state. There's all these events, the Open, Tennis Open, the Grand Prix.
Are we going to see people at tennis?
Well, are we? I don't know. I mean, wow. We'd like to think that we will, but it's going to need that kick-off again. It's going to need government to focus on having those events again, with people going to them, to have that events industry kicked off. And you're right. We've certainly I've had conversations with people in the events industry, and as you rightly say, it's not just a decrease, it's zero. They've got zero to actually get involved in, or actually to events to plan.
Just before you go, we've also had the ICAC finding out some terrible things about goings on behind the scenes with our trains. Finding out that there were dealings going on, finding out that the schedule for cleaning those trains and those trams was not being met. I mean, at this most critical time in our lives, when our health, supposedly is the most important thing in Victoria, is going on, how can this be allowed to continue? What do you imagine is going to come out of this?
Well, the CEO has already been dismissed.
Yep.
And it's when a government's supposed to keep us safe, not just from a crime point of view, but from a public health and wellbeing point of view as well. These revelations are quite damning, and the government does need to be held accountable for it. The CEO was enthusiastically endorsed by the minister at the time, Jacinta Allen, when he was appointed, and they have to take a degree of responsibility about how that's been run, because what I'm seeing and what we've seen through the code inquiry is there is clearly a lack of oversight from government on its bureaucracy, and it seems to be permeating throughout the whole of government, and I think people have to understand that in a situation like the one we're in, there has to be a seamless integration between the bureaucracy and the government, both working for the betterment of Victorians, and that's not what we're getting at the moment at all.
Ryan Smith, thank you very much for coming in and chewing the fat
Always
on
a pleasure.
The Informer. Ryan Smith, the member for Warrandyte on the program.